Hello, my name is Nick, and I would like to welcome you to my series on my BPT journey. This presentation is my own opinion and is not endorsed by any group. I needed to sit both exams multiple times, and it took me 7 years to complete my training, which may sound like the opposite of an endorsement to listen, but through this rocky journey, I had to keep reflecting on and reapproaching this process from numerous angles, which has provided me with what I consider a number of useful insights, which I intend to share so that you may have a smoother journey. This, however, is not a rule book, and I simply want you to incorporate the points which help you. This presentation is the 10th and final of my presentations and focuses on what considerations to make when you don't pass either the written or the clinical exam. As I've already said, I failed both of the exams, but also I have now passed BPT. So I am proof that failure is not the end unless you choose it to be. In this situation, I want to reassure you that it is normal to feel sad. You have worked hard for the past 2 or more years. You've made sacrifices and hoped, and unfortunately you didn't get the result you wanted. As advised in the section where I discussed results day, this is not a time for isolation. You should instead gather your support system. I want to clarify that though a low mood may be normal, if it is significantly impacting your daily life or causing safety concerns, please seek professional advice as soon as possible. Personally, I think after failing my exams, I felt melancholy for a number of weeks. I was still able to do my usual day-to-day activities and socialize, but I wasn't fulfilled as I usually was. It took me a while to recognize that I was putting too much emphasis on the result. That not passing somehow also demonstrated that I was a failure as a doctor and in some ways a person in general. Then I realized that the exam is not perfect and doesn't perfectly assess you or you as a doctor. It is a snapshot of how you performed in a fictional scenario that is not reproducible, but instead partially based on luck. You are more than this exam, and your medical capabilities and talents go far beyond what this test can assess. Do not beat yourself up. The most useful resource I found at this time was talking to my colleagues and mentors. Through doing this, I found out that so many of the doctors I admired had also not passed their exam. Other resources I found useful were the book How to Pass the RACP Written and Clinical Exams by Rouse and Johnson, which has a whole section on not passing the exam, and the YouTube videos by Christine Barker. In particular, Resitting the RACP Clinical, watch this first, and Failing the RACP Clinical Exam, what you need to know. I would recommend watching these for anyone in this situation. I would advise taking a break post results coming out. Though the length of time you have before the next resit differs between the written and the clinical, in either case, a break to rest your mind and reset your focus is usually prudent. Attempts to try to jump back into study straight away are rarely fruitful. Instead, focus on processing the outcome, spending time with your support system, and realigning any priorities that may have been neglected during the preparation. In response to failing, sometimes I was filled with a drive to get back to studying, and other times a drive to stay away from it as much as possible. The times I was driven to return, in hindsight, were just misguided periods of anxiety and desperation for change. During these times, I advised year-long project plans to get ready for the next sitting, but eventually, once I actually let my mind calm, I found the plans not very useful. On the other hand, when I allowed myself to take a break and focused on other aspects of myself, like my love of travel, I found that I more quickly recovered from my melancholy, gained a broader perspective, and, when I was ready, reapproached the study with more verve. When you feel ready to restart, it is best to start with reflection. Personal reflection on what led to the outcome and how this can be corrected in the future is important. Supplement this reflection with advice from your mentors and colleagues, as well as the formal feedback you will receive from the college. Once this information has been gathered, it is time to plan, remind yourself of your goals, and then start again. I want to point out that though I list numerous sources to help your reflection on yourself is by far the most important. All of the other sources, though still useful, are limited compared to your understanding. So this is the time to be honest with yourself, to identify where you need to change to meet your goals, and to plan to grow. My key point for this presentation is that failing is not a bad thing, but not learning from it is. That concludes my presentation on what to consider if you don't pass either the written or clinical BPT exam. Thank you for watching and good luck on your journey.